Cities Lowell initiative is a 13-partner collaboration focusing on the Acre neighborhood of Lowell, which is the lowest income neighborhood in the city. We focus mainly on inclusive community engagement around connecting people to economic development opportunities and civic engagement and leadership. The Greater Lowell Community Foundation is a key partner in the Working Cities Lowell initiative. The executive director, Jay Linehan, serves on our executive committee, and he plays an integral role in developing strategies and really kind of being a leader in our partnership and breaking down barriers to getting things done. So a lot of folks in the Acre can be disconnected from certain resources, so we really made a huge effort an intentional effort to connect people to those resources. One thing that's coming up specifically for Acre residents and businesses is a small business loan fund coming through the John Dark Credit Union and connected to, it will be distributed through the CTI Entrepreneurship Center. And so it's a small business loan for residents and businesses of the Acre to start their own business or grow their current business. Another thing we do monthly is a chop dinner, which is a space where people are able to come, enjoy a healthy meal, connect with resources, and also organizations can connect with people. So it's a great way for organizations to engage the community.
Trinity is a ambulance service. We provide ambulance service for and 911 services for multiple communities. We cover Dracut, Lowell, Chelmsford, and Haverhill, parts of Boxford, Groveland, and southern New Hampshire. So what are the ways that Trinity gives back to the community? In addition to events like this and organizations like this, we also try to reach out and recruit within our own community. We try to provide jobs and training for both people to work for Trinity and just training for people within our community themselves. We also do provide services to try to combat overdoses and homelessness and substance use disorder within the community by donating services such as the Lowell Co-op team. There's a member from Trinity that is paid by Trinity to be a part of that.
NETSCOUT has been in business for over about 35 years. They are based in Westford, Massachusetts. That's their headquarters. They are a worldwide company. NETSCOUT, to put it in layman's terms, because I'm not as technical as some of the other ones, we do a lot of monitoring your networks behind the scenes. So we will make sure your phones are always working, your computers are always working. So we do a lot of cybersecurity. Corporate philanthropy is at the heart of NETSCOUT and the heart of giving. So they would really love for the companies and their employees to give back our technology and our just our volunteers and the things that we like to do with our communities. On a daily basis, the employees of NETSCOUT are allowed to take time off of work to go give to volunteer for their programs that they like to volunteer, their nonprofits that they like to volunteer. They encourage us to do that, and they look forward to the grant program. We look forward to having these different participants come in, tell us their stories. We like to go out and volunteer. We're into Habitat. We love to go build houses. As you can see from the different groups that we have done throughout the last 5 years, we've done gardening, we've done the food bank, we've done Megan's House. So NETSCOUT really encourages their employees to give back to the community. NETSCOUT is affiliated with the Greater Lowell Community Foundation Center through their How to Giving program. We have started with them 5 years ago with our grants. So what they do for us is they gather up all the grant participants for us, and they streamline it for us so that we don't have to look through so many, and they will dwindle it down to quite a few, the different organizations that we're looking for. We give them the specifics that we need and that we're looking for, and then they give us the participants.
My company designs and manufactures integrated circuits for a variety of end uses, some of them military, some of them commercial. We tend to be in a lot of products that we're not actually making the product, we make the parts that go into it. So say like an Intel processor is in a computer, so we design amplifiers and mixers and switches that go into a lot of end use things like radios. We have something in a maritime radar for keeping boats safe. We have some parts on the Mars rover, things like that. So lots of different things. It's kind of exciting. We're affiliated with GLCF because they help us to administer our scholarship program. We wanted to do something. We started looking into the logistics of it, and it was just appalling. We didn't know what to do, and we were almost going to give up, and then someone suggested going through a foundation. I contacted the GLCF, and they've been awesome. They make sure that all of the regulatory pieces are correct, but then all we have to do is give the money and pick the scholarship winners, and it's a great partnership. It's important that we give back to our community. We also see that it's necessary if our country is going to continue. And when we look into the workplace, especially as engineers, we don't see as many women as we should. And so that's been the big drive, has been to get women to be energized and really get into this. And to be honest with you, having done it, it's been a great experience, not just for myself, but for the entire staff. Also, we're affiliated with a number of charities in the area. I very much like the Wish Project and a number of other ones around here. LTLC, the Transitional Living Center. We try and help wherever we can in this area. So it's important, and it's once again very rewarding.
I'm with Exuda. We are a 501c3 registered in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. We offer small interest-free loans, which are up to $600 to people in our community that need a helping hand. And that's really those individuals and the working families that struggle with day-to-day needs. And Exuda is really our online platform. Our company gives back to the local community by partnering with local nonprofits and businesses, specifically HR departments. We are working with individuals that they refer to us that are in the community, and we're able to offer a helping hand. Secondly, we work with local businesses that have HR staff that can work with offering Exuda to employees as an added benefit at no cost to them.
Lowell Sun Charities was founded in 1947, and the Charities runs the Golden Glove boxing tournament, and we also run the Sun Santa Fund, which the Charities founded in 1988. So we're started for Sun Santa. We'll be kicking off our 4th decade of working with the Greater Lowell community and helping bring the joy of Christmas to Greater Lowell. We're so fortunate to have the Greater Lowell Community Foundation and Jay Linehan and his awesome crew here. And it is a partnership. We say it's a village, and we're very lucky. We have the village of Lowell. We all work together and help each other financially and support each other.
So we're just trying to make it bigger. We're reaching out to more. We're able to help more families during the holiday season. I think last year we helped like over 1,400 families between food, toys, clothing, and that's what we do with what we raise. We work with the Salvation Army, and they interview families for us, and they issue chits to go to different stores, markets, the Lewis markets, Hannaford markets, toy stores, Rogers Toy Store, and they send us the bill, and we pay the bill.
I'd like to welcome you to our Celebrate Giving and to thank you all for your generosity. We're all here to celebrate business philanthropy and the community impact that it makes. How fortunate we are to have a community foundation in our community, and how fortunate we also are to have so many nonprofits within our community that make life better for so many folks in need. And this is a wonderful evening where we have all this meshed together and have a lot of very impactful individuals in our audience who do amazing things on a daily basis. We're very appreciative of all of our sponsors. In particular, I'd like to thank some of our key sponsors. First, the premier sponsor, Enterprise Bank. We'd like to thank our platinum sponsors, Nancy Donahue, DCU, Eastern Bank, the Lowell Sun, and Trinity EMS. And we'd also like to thank our gold sponsors, Eastern Salt Company and S&R Corporation. We appreciate all that you do to make our foundation better on a daily basis. At this point, it's my pleasure to introduce Jay Linehan, our President and CEO.
Key part of our mission. I want to thank Chet. Chet's my boss, so I have to thank Chet. He is the chair of our board, as he noted, and I want to thank him for all his guidance and for his leadership. And amongst us as well tonight, there are quite a number of folks that represent the Greater Lowell Community Foundation Board of Directors, and I want to thank them as well. Because without the board and without the chair, it creates a totally different atmosphere. And the support and the guidance that I receive from them is incredible. So I want to thank all of them so much. I want to thank the staff that put this all together. We want to thank them so much. We also want to thank our donors. Without the sponsors, without the donors, we don't exist. That is the reason why we do exist. And we've got a couple of elected officials here tonight that I want to recognize. From Tingsboro, Selectman Steve Nacco. Steve, thank you for joining us tonight. And our Registry of Deeds, Dick Howe, who is also with us here tonight. Thank you. The flu bug grabbed both of our representatives, Tom Gold and Dave Nangle. Both gave me emails just not that long ago saying, you really don't want me here tonight. And I said, you're right, I don't. And thanks to our business philanthropy partners. This evening we had several tables set up by our business philanthropy partners. Thank them so much as well. And finally, I want to thank my family. I can't believe how much they put up with me over all these years, but they do. And I've got several of them here with me tonight. I've got my unbelievable wife, Patty, who's been with me for 37 years. I met her when I was 4 years old. I've got my great brother, Tom. It says Thomas on his name tag. Many of you may know him as Tucker. And my sister-in-law, Barbara, who kept telling Patty not to marry me, but she did anyways. So thank you all for being here tonight. Well, our event tonight is entitled Business Philanthropy and Community Impact. For many years, the debate was whether the purpose and profits work together or are fundamentally at odds with each other. Whether purpose and profits work together or are fundamentally at odds with each other. Nearly some 50 years ago, Milton Friedman, a Nobel Prize winner, of an economist, admonished American business leaders that their only responsibility was to maximize profits. According to Friedman and his proponents, social responsibility and the purpose of building healthier, safer, fairer, and environmentally sustainable and inclusive communities should be the province of individuals and nonprofit organizations. If businesses focus on making money for the shareholders, the good stuff will follow. Since then, our world, our communities have changed drastically. Culturally, socially, economically, and demographically. We look and we act far different than we did some 50 years ago, or for that matter, 10 years ago, or for that matter, even 5 years ago. The needs in our community continue to increase, while at the same time, resources continue to decrease. Across the board, our government debates what's important and what's not. Few things are clear. Although one thing is certain, change is a constant. And for corporate social responsibility, that is true as well. The business model is evolving with our society as it looks to be more accountable and more responsible to itself, to its shareholders, and to the public. Last month, the Business Roundtable, CEOs of nearly 200 Fortune 500 companies, issued a statement that shareholder value is no longer their main objective. That shareholder value is no longer their main objective. Rather, investing in employees, delivering value to customers, dealing ethically, and supporting outside communities are now at the forefront of American business goals. That Americans deserve an economy that allows each person to succeed through hard work and creativity and to lead a life of meaning and dignity. So what does all of that mean? Does the juxtaposition of profit and purpose provide an opportunity for businesses to work alongside government and nonprofit partners to become true and impactful agents of social change? According to Giving USA, Americans gave $428 billion in 2018. This reflects a 0.7% increase from the prior year. The largest source of charitable giving came from, as usual, individuals, $292 billion, 68% of that total, followed by foundations, thank you very much. I wish we did the $76 billion that happened last year, but we didn't. Then bequests, and then corporations at $20 billion, or 5% of total given. That amount represents a significant increase, however, of 5.4%, or $1 billion from the prior year, exclusive of billions of more in-kind contributions. This shift in business philosophy is certainly welcome, although not totally surprising, and to some extent, not totally new, as philanthropy is good for business, and business is good for philanthropy. But again, what does it mean? Not only what does it mean in our community where we live, but also what does it mean in the office where we work? Will corporate giving continue to increase at the pace as it did last year and engage even more employees in what to give and how to give, thereby creating a greater sense of community and meaning? I certainly hope so. Will business invest more in the workplace? A place where we all sometimes spend way too much time, and even to the extent that we spend more time than we do at home. Do we want the workplace to become more of a place where we want to go rather than a place where we need to go, by addressing the inequities of equal pay, equal pay for equal work among women, by endorsing inclusion and diversity in the workplace, and promoting fairness by investing in their people? I certainly do hope so. As I look across those gathered out here tonight, and across the Greater Lowell Community Foundation, the Greater Lowell community as a whole, I am heartened by what I see. A desire to make a difference where we live, where we work, and where we play. I certainly thank our business partners for doing what they are doing towards this end. And while much remains to be done, I think we're on the right path. And I think our program tonight is indicative of that. Paul Blount founded Custom MMIC. Through his dedication to his science and by creating a superior product, he has made Custom MMIC a fast-growing industry leader. We got to know Paul a few years ago when he and his wife Kate came to us looking for a solution to a problem. As much as he wanted to hire women engineers, he had a very difficult time finding them. Being innovators, Paul and Kate approached the problem differently. Rather than simply trying to market the job in a different way to a different audience, they decided, let's grow our own women engineers. Working with the Greater Lowell Community Foundation, the Blounts have instituted and very generously supported a scholarship program for graduating high school girls to pursue an education in engineering. In addition to significant financial assistance, they also offer the young women meaningful summer internship programs at Custom MMIC, This gives them valuable, direct experience and a head start on a professional resume. Now in year 2, the Blounts are already sponsoring 6 women, 3 from each year, and intend to add 3 more each year into the future. We applaud this important focus and incredible generosity. Certainly, personal and business philanthropy at its finest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Paul Blount.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Greater Lowell Community Foundation for inviting me to take part in this panel. It's an honor to be up here tonight. 14 years ago, I took a chance and started Custom MMIC in my basement. It was cold. We started by providing design services to our industry, but then began to produce standard products for microwave and millimeter wave systems. Since then, Custom MMIC has grown to 35 employees and over 180 standard and custom products. And years ago, we moved into a 20,000 square feet of office and lab space in Chelmsford, Massachusetts. People ask, well, what is Custom MMIC? It's difficult. Our products are not generally known by consumers, but you've certainly heard about the places they've ended up. We're in the Mars rover to help it communicate with the Earth. We're in marine radars to help boats navigate and avoid collisions. We're in IED jammers that keep our soldiers safe when they drive down hostile streets. We're in the new generation of high-capacity satellites that will bring high-speed internet worldwide. We don't make the products, we make the parts that make them work. I hope that gives you an idea. Even in the early days of the company, we made a conscious decision to effect change in our world. We noticed that it was extremely difficult for women, mothers in particular, to go back to work when their kids reached school age. There was always a half day or a sickness to deal with on a completely bizarre and unpredictable schedule. The only jobs that they could accommodate was such requirements were at nights and on weekends, times I'm sure most of us would agree would be better spent with their families. As a result, many women seemed to just give up the search. So we at Custom MMIC at the time needed part-time help during the day, especially for logistical areas such as billing and finance. Therefore, we created a program for people to work 4 to 5 hours a day, 3 to 4 days a week. We knew such a program would be appealing to moms, which gave us a vast labor pool of talent to choose from. The timing of the job allowed drop-off and pick-up at school. The choice of day each week was flexible to allow for those roving half days or unexpected trips to the doctors. Over the years, we've had 6 women accept offers in this role, where they've started off with general administration jobs, but then as our needs grew and their experience broadened, we were able to train them for higher skilled positions and give them more hours as their children grew up. Just a couple of examples. We hired a former architect to help with bill payment at first, but now she's transitioned to a full manufacturing and quality role. She inspects, picks, and prepares for shipping our products intended for satellites and other high reliability environments. We also have a former banker who began with us as a receptionist, but now she's in charge of our export compliance program and deals with the tortuous rules imposed by the US government. She also interfaces with the State Department, customs officials, to ensure our products are not being diverted into the wrong hands, which is a very important job at Custom MMIC, given that our technology is often used in military systems. Most of these jobs are in high demand in the technology sector and will serve them well as careers moving forward. As the company grew and became more successful, I decided to address one shocking disparity seen every time I walk into a conference room. Where are all the women? There's always far more men than women. There's no logical reason for this, absolutely none. So we decided to effect change. We started a scholarship for young women. We wanted to start a scholarship for young women to study engineering at the undergraduate level. But as we began to research the logistics of such a program, we quickly learned that this was not going to be easy. From the legal obligations required of charitable groups, to filings with the IRS, to the expensive logistics we'd have to put in place before we'd given $1 away, the scholarship program seemed to fall apart before it had even begun. But then to our rescue came the Greater Lowell Community Foundation. Can't say more highly things about this organization. They perform all of the heavy regulatory and compliance lifting and allows us to concentrate on the fun part, which is helping young women go into engineering school. We began the Custom MMIC Women in Engineering Scholarship Program in the spring of 2018. That year we received applications from 11 highly qualified candidates from Westford, Groton and Dunstable, and it was incredibly difficult to down select to a winner. In the end, we chose to support 3 women with sizable scholarships over the full 4 years as they embarked on their studies at Tulane, UMass Lowell, and Clarkson University. And Grace is here over there. This past spring, she's great. This past spring in 2019, we expanded our target area to include Chelmsford, basically wherever the company has been. We received 15 applications and again chose 3 recipients who this fall enrolled in Tufts University, Northeastern, and WPI. We will continue this program in the spring 2020, where we hope to receive even more applications. However, we realized that while helping women attend college was important, so too was the opportunity for them to gain real-world experience via paid internships. Therefore, this past summer, we invited the 3 scholarship recipients from 2018 to come and work for Custom MMIC in varying engineering roles. All 3 accepted and were with us from May to August. We made sure they had challenging jobs, that they were treated with respect, and most importantly, that they could publish a paper summarizing their work at the end of the summer. Emma worked on thermal analysis. Grace worked on adaptive outlier removal to improve production test yields. Sarah worked on space qualification boards and DC sequencers for our amplifiers. The articles and white papers they wrote are in final stages of review, and indeed Emma's paper entitled Verification of Thermal Simulations of Gas FETs Using Liquid Crystal Measurements, boy that trips off the tongue, has just been published in Microwave Product Digest. This will give them credible work experience and make their resumes look impressive when compared to their peers when they go out into the workforce. We hope to extend the internship program in the summer of 2020 by inviting the now 6 scholarship recipients to come and work with us. So why am I up here talking about this? Internships and scholarship programs abound in engineering companies, and we're certainly not the first to offer these. But to date, the vast majority of these opportunities have been offered only by large corporations. We are here to say that small companies have their place and can even possibly provide an even better experience for these students. We're proud of the company that we have created, but what we do for these amazing young women are ripples in a much bigger pond. If we can assist them financially, facilitate a great work experience, and show them how good the career of an engineer can be, imagine how this world will improve. Thank you. Just a little something. Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Paul, thank you so much. Another round of applause for that. We are very proud to be in the 5th year of the NETSCOUT Heart of Giving Community Grant Program at the Greater Lowell Community Foundation. A key part of our mission is to connect philanthropic business and individuals to the needs of their communities. Giving back to the community in which it operates amplifies a company's greater purpose, and NETSCOUT demonstrates a tangible commitment to supporting important local issues. The grant process that we have with NETSCOUT includes selecting criteria, soliciting grants from nonprofits, scoring the grants, selecting 3 finalists who then present at NETSCOUT, and then selecting the final winner, all of which is done by the NETSCOUT employees. Past grant recipients of the program include Gaining Ground, Megan's House, Katie's Closet, Rise Above, and this year, the Merrimack Valley Food Bank. In total, $50,000 has been distributed. A unique feature of the grant program is that it requires the recipient nonprofit to provide NETSCOUT with a volunteer opportunity. On average, a dozen or 2 NETSCOUT employees commit to serve for the nonprofit, giving them, the NETSCOUT employees, an invaluable inside perspective of what goes on in that organization in the work they do in the community. This year, NETSCOUT has 4 volunteer opportunities planned at the Merrimack Valley Food Bank, including taking on the task of making 1,000 soup kits in their cafeteria. NETSCOUT's commitment to business philanthropy is tremendous, and we are proud to partner with them. It is with great pleasure that I present NETSCOUT with the 2019 Greater Lowell Community Foundation Business Philanthropy Partner Award. Accepting this reward on behalf of NETSCOUT is Karen McCluskey, Director of Internal Communications. Karen? So I know you're all wondering what's in the box. Karen doesn't know what's in the box either. By the way, they didn't tell me what's in the box either. No, that's just a joke. But I did not pick it out.
Oh, it's pretty. Look at that. Very nice.
Okay, we just rented this, so it needs to go back. I think I just broke it putting it back into the box.
Nice going. Nice going.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, hi everyone. On behalf of everyone at NETSCOUT, thank you. It's an honor to be recognized as Business Philanthropy Partner. 5 years ago, we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. We were looking for a way to build connections in the community and engage employees throughout the entire process. Working with the foundation, we were able to design a program that allowed us to achieve that. And 5 years later, here we are. So thank you to Jay and the staff of the foundation, Jennifer and Fatima, which I saw over there, and Howard for your guidance and expertise. I'd also like to thank NETSCOUT, not only for funding the grant, which is kind of the key part, but also for inviting the community into the workplace, where we have the opportunity to learn and discuss these issues that impact all of us. And very importantly, I'd like to thank everyone at NETSCOUT, my colleagues, my coworkers, everyone who finds the time to volunteer and to get involved. Kim Hampson, wherever she went, is a shining example of someone who does just that. We'd also like to convey our appreciation to all the nonprofits who have come to Westford and spent time with us and told us what they do and how they're making a difference. Every story has an impact and generates a lot of discussion. And to our 5 grant recipients, it's been a privilege to get to know you and to work beside you. We appreciate that opportunity. So thank you.
Prabal Charkrabarti is Senior Vice President and Community Affairs Officer at the Boston Federal Reserve. Prabal has published and presented research on community development topics such as affordable housing, venture capital in secondary cities, and urban business development. Prabal also plays a key role in the Working Cities Challenge initiative, a grant program initiated to revitalize Gateway and other similar cities in New England. The Working Cities Lowell initiative received a grant several years ago and is a partnership led by the City of Lowell and the Coalition for a Better Acre, together with 13 other key organizations in the City of Lowell, with the Greater Lowell Community Foundation being one of them. The goal of the program is to alleviate the effects of poverty on the residents and the businesses in the Acre community, one of Lowell's most ethnically diverse and economically challenged neighborhoods, with strategies for civic engagement and inclusion together with certain other economic initiatives. I am pleased to report that just this past week, in furtherance of our effort for inclusion, the Working Cities Initiative partnered with the Greater Lowell Community Foundation, Lowell Votes, Mass Voter Table, and nonprofit votes to work to disseminate some 38,000 flyers to households across Lowell in 4 different languages, English, Spanish, Khmer, and Portuguese, regarding the non-binding referendum on the municipal election ballot question scheduled for November 5 in Lowell that will change how city councilors in Lowell get elected. They will hit the mailboxes the week of the 28th. I am very, very pleased for that and thrilled with our partners and how we did that. Prabal Charkrabarti holds graduate degrees from MIT and Oxford University, where he was a Marshall Scholar, and a Bachelor of Science from the University of Illinois, where he was a Truman Scholar. He serves on the boards of the Children's Investment Fund and the Nellie Mae Education Foundation Board. The Greater Lowell Community Foundation is very honored that he has agreed to be our keynote this evening for the Business Philanthropy and Community Impact. Please join me in welcoming Prabal Charkrabarti.
Wonderful. Good evening. Thank you so much. And I just want to say, before I even give this speech, those awardees, the programs that you talked about, what Jay talked about, the foundation, this is really the subject of my speech. And I couldn't have asked for a better setup than what you heard today about business being involved in the communities, thinking about issues of equity and inclusion. And in fact, that's what my remarks are about, that the economic success of Lowell depends on your participation. Building an inclusive and truly inclusive local economy is complex, it's adaptive, and it takes the kind of collaborative muscle that you're developing here, by being here, by participating, and also through the Working Cities Lowell team with some of the accomplishments that Jay cited and that I'm going to speak a bit more about. The good news here, and I'm going to sort of cut to the punchline, is that there are tangible things that each of you can do to build on what you've already been doing and to amplify those efforts and make Lowell into the best city it can possibly be. So I'm also very honored, actually, Jay, to be asked by the Lowell Community, Greater Lowell Community Foundation, and by a community foundation. So first of all, the Federal Reserve and the Community Foundation actually share the same birthday, if you will. They are both the first community foundation in Cleveland, and the first Federal Reserve Bank began in 1913, so we celebrated our centennial not so long ago. And now sort of reflecting on this, it's sort of interesting that we're sort of the same star sign, if you will. And I thought that, well, what's the qualities of our star sign? And it's really about reflecting local priorities and really the emphasis of local knowledge and the importance of local knowledge in achieving local goals. And I think that's something that's shared by the Boston Fed and by the Greater Lowell Community Foundation and community foundations around the country. So we really partner a lot as a Fed system. So let me just start by saying small cities like Lowell obviously have tremendous potential and indeed have a solid record of accomplishment. In particular here in Lowell, I don't have to restate for you the achievements that you see just as you walk around the downtown here. These sort of well-known achievements of downtown redevelopment, the civic infrastructure that the Lowell Plan created. We have assets like the younger workforce, the access to Boston, anchor institutions like UMass Lowell, for example, a leading school, and I know very well known for its first engineering program. Glad that we have the student here for that. And the businesses located here, manufacturing firms in particular, but all kinds of industries ranging from different clusters. The diverse residents. So these are great assets, really great assets. So when you're a Federal Reserve Bank, you think about an economy that's built on assets. However, I think it also isn't a surprise to most of you that we can't gloss over the challenges that are here. Lowell's post-recession recovery has been slow, even in relative terms. And so I'm going to just compare here for a moment to the city of Lawrence. And I was asking Jay if Lawrence was still the big football rival, and he said it's Haverhill now. So I know that you're not too competitive with Lawrence, but I know that when you look at measures like income and poverty, comparatively speaking, Lowell is in a better position than Lawrence. It has a higher median household income. It has a slightly lower poverty rate. But in recent years, from 2011 to 2017, Lawrence has actually made some real strides in improving on both of these measures. And Lowell has actually gotten somewhat worse on both measures. And it's an evening, so I don't want to give too many statistics here. But in terms of percentage points, poverty has increased by 4.8 percentage points in Lowell and dropped by 4.4 percentage points in Lawrence. Roughly a quarter of Lowell residents live in poverty. Income inequality, the share of residents that make more than $35,000 per year is growing in Lawrence. At the same time, Lowell actually had a drop in the share of households that make above $35,000. So you also have a comparative drop in income inequality. And then household income in Lawrence, again off a low base, grew by about 15% from 2011 to 2017. 6-year period is a solid barometer of the post-recession recovery. Massachusetts as a state grew about 3.2%, right? So let's just take that as a baseline. It dropped by about 13% in Lowell, median household income. Now there's some statistical reasons why you can try to sort of look at medians and explain, and census, obviously it follows the geographic area, doesn't follow the people, so you can sort of try to surmise. You can't figure out exactly what's going on. But I'll just say, looking at these numbers with a broad brush, this is not strong performance if you're thinking about a truly inclusive economy and how the low and moderate income, the sort of working class, if you will, are faring in the city. So that's a real challenge. So why am I at the Boston Fed even talking about these sort of statistics? What is our interest in small cities like Lowell? So first at the outset, sometimes people, in fact even at the reception, people are sort of asking me about interest rates, and they associate the Boston Fed with interest rate policy and monetary policy, and that's right. That's right. Our mandate is stable prices and full employment. And when you think about, and it's given to us by Congress, if you think about the full employment mandate, clearly, monetary policy and interest rate levels, like powerful tool, very blunt instrument, we are never going to achieve our potential and our full employment potential without thinking about other types of interventions. And so my area, community development, exists because the Fed wants to fulfill its dual mandate, its full employment mandate. And when we think here in New England about full employment, we have to think about small and medium-sized cities, right? We see obviously the performance in a city like Boston, but it's really the small and medium-sized cities where you see generally lower rates of labor force participation and a lot of comparatively higher rates and certainly a presence of people in poverty. So what would it take for Lowell to sort of stop losing ground and ensure that the economic growth, it's happening in Massachusetts, it's happening around the country, benefits everyone? So I would say it's a strategy focused on inclusion and very much like the one that's being pursued by the Working Cities Lowell team, helping to ensure that the city's young, diverse population is not just participating, but lending their voices, their talents, their hard work, and their productivity to the city's economy. So let me just sort of take a step back here. And we've talked about working cities, and we've brought this up, and it's a grant. What is the Working Cities Challenge, and why did Lowell receive a grant? So in a nutshell, the Boston Fed is a research institution, like as you might expect. And about 10 years ago, we were looking at places of concentrated poverty in cities like Springfield, in cities like Hartford. And as research economists, they were asking the question, well, this is decades in deindustrialization and job loss and manufacturing loss. Are there any cities that were centers of manufacturing in 1960 doing well? And they looked at the data, and they found, comparatively speaking, there were in fact cities, and they looked across the country, and found there were a set of cities, resurgent cities, that were doing comparatively quite well, much better than their peers, that saw their income plummet to from 110% of the U.S. average to about 60% of the U.S. average. So that's the norm. That's sort of where a lot of these cities went. But a set of cities were really able to retain their economic vitality. They still had dropped some, but had a very solid median family income. And the question was why. And I'm going to make a long research paper short. We're definitely here in the evening. And I'm not going to talk with you about all the descriptive variables and regressions. But they actually took a different tack and did a different kind of paper and looked at what was the story of these cities that were resurgent. These are places like Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and Grand Rapids, Michigan, that were smaller, that had a lot of manufacturing, but really had maintained their vitality. And some suspects were, it was the proximity to a major metro area, or it was, the demographics of the city, or its particular manufacturing mix. None of those could explain why those cities did better. There was a set of things that mattered. Investment by anchor institutions, investment in infrastructure. But the key factor, the necessary condition, not sufficient, but necessary, was the presence of a leader or leaders, leadership, that could bring together other sectors with a common vision and measurement and accountability towards that vision. And it didn't matter if it was from an energetic mayor or from a visionary philanthropist. The leader could come from anywhere, the business sector, a nonprofit leader. What matters is they were able to bring others along with this common vision. And that was the common thread that was woven through these resurgent cities. And so the Fed, again, having a lot of economists, thought, well, how do we incentivize this kind of behavior? And so to make a long sort of investigative process short, we ended up designing the Working Cities Challenge, which is that grant competition, merit-based, to find places that really had the capability of turning things around with civic infrastructure, with that set of leaders rowing in the same direction. Economic growth, of course, is the long-term goal, but as an interim measure, as an important measure, having that sort of social capital with each other and that collaborative muscle to move things forward. So that was the effort that we built. The Working Cities Lowell team was one of our second round awardees, and they have spent the past 4 years building capacity in the 4 criteria of our competition. So I talked about collaborative leadership. We required the team to have a member of the public, private, nonprofit sectors. We required the team to be working on changing systems. We required true engagement from the community, from all the community, especially those that are being, the ostensible beneficiaries of the effort. And then we required a sort of learning orientation, being able to learn from evidence and from data, of course, with a Fed. So we eat data for breakfast. I mean, I think that has to be, and for dinner. Although I did enjoy the hors d'oeuvres a lot. That was pretty good. That's some of the accomplishments of the Working Cities Lowell team. I spoke to the Jeanne d'Arc Credit Union today. They've created an Acre Catalyst Fund together with the CTI Entrepreneurship Center. This is a $200,000 loan fund to support entrepreneurship and small business for development for Acre residents. And their support coming from Middlesex Community College, from E4All, from the city of Lowell, and from the Greater Lowell Chamber of Commerce, right? So I see all these names to say that's where you're starting to get the system change. Because it's not about just the fund or the money. It's about getting these partners working together to address a system. In terms of inclusion, the City Council has now engaged in translating the City Council meetings. Now I have to say City Council meetings can be a bit like Fed meetings, sort of not always the most exciting meeting. And so one of the things that they did was actually translate the high-level summaries of these meetings to really get that true engagement into Spanish and to Khmer, I think, that as well. So, and then there's been a consistent space created for intentional community engagement. Over 1,500 people have attended a series of dinners that have been put on by the effort. And there have been over 10 partners that have been involved in putting that on. So it's encouraging as we transition away out of the grant period. The grant was meant to be catalytic. It's not a permanent source of sustainability. You, the partners here, and the other national philanthropy and others that have been engaged in our effort, that's really the story around sustainability. So we want to share a few key lessons from what we've learned. How do we make sure, trying to make sure you include everyone, like that's really messy work. Honestly, it's messy. And it doesn't always feel linear. I mean, it truly feels sometimes that you're taking sort of a step back in order to take a few steps forward. It can feel slower. You have to get buy-in, building others. But it really is, as the research shows, the necessary ingredient. And changing, again, this is not something to gloss over, but making change in a city is not going to happen overnight. In the resurgent cities I talked about, these changes occurred over years and in a lot of cases a decade or two. But it's certainly a 10-year process. I think that we can confidently say to be able to see a change in the numbers. So, it seems like a long time, but again, we're in the 4th year of the Working Cities effort. So, 10 years is not that far away. So one of the most important things that we believe that Lowell leaders can do is to support a strategy for more inclusive growth through, so I fear this is going to get a little jargony, so I'm going to tell a little story first of all. So let's first think about what it took to get to the moon, and I know we have a company here who helps get us to Mars, right? To get the rover to Mars. And if you think about the moon and getting to the moon and what that took, I mean, that was an enormously difficult challenge, but it is the quintessential technical challenge, right? It is, there's this rock that's going around the Earth, right? You got to do the physics, and you got to have the German rocket scientist who has a rocket technology, and you have to have the sort of American ingenuity, and you have to have the story of the hidden figures who are doing the computations behind all this. But ultimately, it is a technical challenge, right? And as President Kennedy said, we get there by the end of the decade, and that was 50 years ago now, and it was achieved. And you look in contrast to a complex social problem, and that could be something like solving poverty, or increasing education to the place where it can be. I mean, those are much more complex challenges, much more complex, and they take a very different way of working. And if any of you have the chance to read any of the work of Ron Heifetz, the Harvard professor who had put down some of these sort of concepts, I encourage you to do that. So we've actually taken our teams through training, including the Working Cities team here, on adaptive leadership. And I've actually, as a department, we've all taken the training ourselves because we think it's very important to drink the Kool-Aid that we're serving to others. I hate that analogy. It's the worst analogy, if any of you know where that comes from. But it does feel like that sometimes. So I would say, what's adaptive leadership? Well, it's really 4 things. First, it's just recognizing that complex problems don't follow your sort of established logic or your established pattern. So working in this space requires sort of pursuing possibilities. It's a different way of thinking about things. It's really shifting your expectations. That's really the first piece. The second is about asking different questions and really valuing different kinds of answers. So outputs and outcomes are hard to measure in a short period of time. I talked about our Working Cities effort, and I talked about the civic infrastructure. How do we measure civic infrastructure, really, right? I talked about the income and the poverty rate and these sorts of things, but how do you measure civic infrastructure? Now we're trying, and our independent evaluators are trying, and we have been measuring the civic infrastructure. We found it to be improving in our cohort of cities that completed the round 1. So I feel very confident that we've improved it. But still, right, it's a thing that's difficult to measure. Adaptive leaders expand their boundaries to ask questions like, what will success look like? How will we know our work is making a difference when we see it? Now, we recognize that answers related to learning and behavior change among leaders is meaningful and important to celebrate because that's a precondition to changing things, to make things better in your community. And that leads into the third piece, which is trying to view the challenges from multiple perspectives. So I'm going to give an example here that I referred earlier from the Working Cities Lowell team. And I made sort of light of it, but initially the team was actually trying to translate the full transcript of the meetings. And then started to engage some of the population that they were trying to sort of serve with this. And they said, we don't need that much information, but we really do need the information. We do want the information. And that's where they sort of pivoted to kind of just highlighting some of the high-level summaries. They tested the idea. And this was something easy. And I want to emphasize, this work is really, really difficult. And it can be long and sort of a slog. But these kinds of changes, experiments that are designed to sort of be easy to fail. Because if this thing failed, I mean, it wasn't going to result in some terrible thing. Okay, so you can't translate to me. You know, you're not translating them right now. So, but looking for these sorts of things, they send a signal about inclusion and involvement in the city and in the government of the city. So there's a real upside to it. So while the work is difficult, I do want to encourage you all to think of these kinds of collaborative experiments rather than, and I have nothing against bricks and mortar projects, but I do think the temptation is, let's do a building, or let's do something that's physical in bricks and mortar. And again, those things are good. I don't want to, downplay those. I just want to say that those end up being something that people devolve to instead of this sort of fuzzy, more messy work of collaborative work. But when we start thinking about these real outcomes, when I talk about these resurgent cities, and we visited them and talked to their leaders, nobody pointed to a stadium or some kind of silver bullet like that as being the thing that turned their city around. Nobody did. They all talked about the leadership and the collaboration. Certainly, again, the investment mattered, the anchor institutions mattered, infrastructure did matter. It's not that bricks and mortar doesn't matter, but I think there can be a temptation to go on to the easier solution in that form, rather than some of these other experiments. The final piece is adopting a learning orientation. Now, working through complex problems is best accomplished by experimenting, testing how the system works. Any way to incorporate this sort of small-scale, safe-to-fail experimentation is a good thing. And I think you want to scale things that move your work in a positive direction, and you want to leave behind those things that don't deliver. So here I'm going to bring up Lawrence again in this example, in part because they were earlier as a Round 1 city. Now, they had a workforce goal. They wanted to increase the income of the parents of their public school students, predominantly Latino, and increase income and then measure the impact on student test scores. I'm happy to say that effort has now engaged hundreds of parents. I think for a cohort of 200, they've increased their wages by 25%, and they have several hundred more in training opportunities, and they've done parent engagement throughout the school system. And the state receivership, other things mattered, but you do see a new engagement in that school system. Now, initially, they had worked with employers to try to interview candidates, and then they were going to talk to the employers about how the candidates did and what the employers thought, and then they were going to give that feedback back to the interviewees that interviewed next time and sort of have this feedback loop. So that was their idea. Sensible idea, right? So that ended up being a pretty resource-intensive process, right? People interview, they not get a job, you're going to go back to the interview, get some information, and then you get a new cohort. So they didn't end up sticking with that approach. But in trying that, they actually developed deeper relationships with the employer firms, and these are in the financial sector, in the health sector, in the manufacturing sector, that they were able to get real traction on in terms of meeting some of their hiring goals and getting some of those companies to better understand some of the barriers that people had and some of the opportunities here. And I'll give an example here of a manufacturer, Gem Manufacturing, which manufactures, I guess I'll call it swag. It's like, you go to a conference or a meeting and there's a bag, and the bag might come from China, or at least it comes from China. And now you have some logos and things, and they developed that last mile of swag. They have actually developed these great sort of bilingual practices on their manufacturing lines that allow you to be promoted even though you're managing in Spanish. And they really see this as a real advantage for them to learn how to operate in this bilingual environment and not just sort of rely on their employees sort of learning English and then being able to get to the job at a certain level. And I just think that's, they see it as a comparative advantage. It's worked for them as a business. This is the type of thing. It's an example. It may be different at a different business here, but that's the kind of thing that we see in terms of making an adaptive challenge. So when we talk here and think here about making Lowell's economy more inclusive, I would like to challenge you all to think more adaptively. And I want to give you a few sort of parting thoughts here on how, what you can do to sort of become a more adaptive leader here in the Lowell context. We've got a really big room here too, so I'm going to do a little sort of who's here. So I'd like to sort of know, who's from the private sector, who's from the, university sector, I'm going to lump university and philanthropy together, maybe. It's not. And then government sector, that'll be a third question. And then community-based sector. And I'll ask other category. But who here is from, I'll start with the private sector. Who's roughly from the private sector? Okay, good. That's a really good private sector involvement. So the fact that you're involved in this effort is really a real positive asset and something to build on. So nonprofit sector, roughly speaking, nonprofit sector, community-based organization, great. Okay, universities and philanthropy, okay, terrific. Great to have you here, great partners. Government, broadly speaking, government sector. Okay, and then other, I just couldn't get your sector. All right, you all put yourself in one. You know, we have cross-sector right here in the room. So I would say in terms of the private sector, now you're often asked for resources, but your perspective is needed. It's needed at these collaborative tables, absolutely, on all of these questions. And I know that it's hard to find time for community meetings. So what I'd say is inform the teams and the groups or Working Cities Lowell about how it's sort of best to interact with you, but don't step away, right? There may be ways in which you can be engaged that work for both parties. You know, they really need you in the design of these efforts, and to think about your own practices and inclusion, and sort of consider how you hire, especially workers in the lower wage end of your spectrum. What practices you have? What barriers might you unwittingly or unconsciously be putting off? What kind of cultural practices or things do you need to understand in order to really access fully and include others? And then after folks are hired, like what's the culture in your organization? How are people being retained and promoted within, and what opportunities and feedback are they being given? It's so important. And look, from the Fed, like this is a super tight labor market, so this also really makes a lot of good business sense for all of you, and I think it makes long-term sense for the city of Lowell. So is there something you can test in the short term to see how your actions are making a difference? Community-based organizations. Now, many of you are championing this vision, you're engaging collaboratively, but what can you do at your own organizations? And I know one example that the team shared with me, which isn't from a Working Cities specific effort, but I know the Lowell Career Center has changed their intake process to learn about and make progress on the degree to which they engage residents through the effort. This is an aligned practice. I happened to be speaking to someone from a health center who talked about an employee effort they did around, I think it was with the Kenyan and the African population, and how they engaged them, and how that, that they just created this different spirit. And I think those are the kinds of things to experiment and test with. And then finally, the city. Now, municipal leadership plays a critical role. And the city's made some important changes to its own practices to advance inclusion, including the way it convenes community voices for key decisions, and then how job openings are shared. And so these are also important things to build on. So, in closing, what I would say is, as you pursue this vision of inclusive economic growth, just remember the purpose of the hard work that you're collectively undertaking. Like, what is this for? And here, I guess I just want to speak in a way sort of more personally. I've talked about why small cities matter to the Fed. I've talked about the terrific effort that you're all engaged in, and the Working Cities Lowell team is engaged in. But if I can speak personally for a second, a bit here on the theme of trying things and success and failure. Why take my word for it? I guess what I'd say is that the world isn't the place that we wish it to be. The city of Lowell isn't yet the city that I know you wish it all to be. In some ways, there's aspects of the city and of the world that we might think of as being sort of better before, as this robust sort of manufacturing economy. In other ways, though, that city, like the world, was never the place that was truly inclusive and truly all of the things that you wanted it to be. And I think as we look ahead, it can be easy to be pessimistic about what's achievable, right? What's achievable. But I absolutely believe that things can be a lot better for the individuals that live in Lowell, and particularly for the children that live in the neighborhoods. And I'll talk here a bit about, I guess, myself. A lot of things that I've worked on, really hard, have failed, or at least haven't yet achieved success. So early in my career, I worked on climate change. I didn't exactly solve that. I've done a lot of work around inequality at different stages of my career, and things seem, quite unequal geographically and spatially. We just had a conference at the Boston Fed about this. I've also had, efforts to try to find cures for or effective treatments for pediatric cancer, and we still have high rates of pediatric cancer. These are things that I've worked on personally. And so I look at those things and I feel those failures very personally. But I also look and I say, well, in the last few years, I've been part of this terrific team doing the Working Cities Challenge. And I don't know if we have the pictures here available. Is it possible to show one of these? Do I have this here? Okay, great. So I'm going to show two pictures here. So this is in the center there, President Eric Rosengren of the Boston Fed. And I think you recognize your city manager here and some other Lowell leaders around the table. But I'm going to forward to the next picture here. And we have here at the table, and this is at the Coalition for Better Acre in Lowell. We brought on a bus presidents of 9 Federal Reserve banks here to Lowell. And one of the other gentlemen sitting there is the #2 person at the Kresge Foundation, which is a $4 billion foundation. And we had other sort of dignitaries. And they came here to Lowell to hear about the Working Cities Challenge, to hear about the Lowell team, and they were absolutely taken aback with the potential, with the progress of your city. And I got to tell you personally how proud I felt, of the face of small cities in Massachusetts and of what Lowell was putting forward. And they came back on the bus buzzing about it. And since then, we've had 2 different reserve banks create programs modeled upon this effort, based in part upon what they were seeing in Lowell. And I tell you, this is not, these Fed presidents are setting interest rates. Their community is important, but they don't spend a lot of their time on buses in cities like Lowell. Like, this is a really big deal and a really big message about how important it is for all of you to work on this and get this problem right. They're doing this because they see that as Lowell goes, so goes the country. Truly, places like Lowell exemplify the potential and also the real challenge in getting economic inclusion everywhere. So this isn't just my view, but what I'm proud about is the ability of the Boston Fed and the team to get this issue on the radar screen of some of the most important policymakers in the world. So I feel good about that, and you should all feel good about that. And so what I just end with to say is that, when I talk about some of these unsolved problems, whether that's medical research or whether that's climate change or whether that's economic inclusion or our political divide, I truly believe that there is a kid, a boy or a girl here in Lowell, living here, who can solve some of these problems, who can tackle some of these problems. But if they don't live in a neighborhood that gives them the opportunity to do that, if all of you sitting here are not participating actively in making that neighborhood a place of opportunity truly for that child, we need that kid. I need that kid. But right now that kid needs you. That kid needs you to be involved in making their community the best possible place it can be, with all the supports and education and the thriving economy for that his or her parents that it needs to be. And I don't feel you have a choice. You have the opportunity, and I feel as a country and as a city, you don't have a choice. You're already stepping up, and all I'm doing here is to ask you to step up even more, grab up, bend that arc of history toward a better opportunity for each and every kid in Lowell. And that's what I have to say. Thank you for listening.
I hope you enjoyed that. I would like you to join me to thank Custom MMIC, NETSCOUT, and the Boston Federal Reserve for all the fabulous work they do to make a difference in the community that we live in. A sincere thanks to all of you who work and do the things in addition to what you heard to make the community a better place that we work in. And let me leave you with a quote from John Rockefeller. think of giving not only as a duty, but as a privilege. Good night, and thank you for coming.